Good Thursday afternoon. Welcome to a football show here on the 440 Sports Network. YouTube page, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is you are joining us. We appreciate you. Donnie already into the comments. How are you? He is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall. We're going to announce a winner, by the way, today. Our second and final winner from Sinkers Beverages to go next Tuesday on a trip to the Bourbon Trail. I have some more details, Zach. There could be a fancy lunch planned as well. So there's going to be some.
Ooh, a picnic?
Oh, maybe just us guys having a picnic. We have so much to discuss today. I was out of practice the last 3 days. What did we learn? I think Titans fans should be super excited, at least for something, at least one thing.
I kind of put it as the Titans offense is fun.
Question mark?
Yeah.
No, so a lot of observations, and hopefully you and I can have maybe a thoughtful and smart conversation about like how to watch practice. And like we make fun of all the tweets and all the videos, and like I just posted one of Derrick Henry, like large man run fast, like way to go. He looks great. But like what do we gain out of all that stuff? I think there's a really smart way to watch practice. And we can talk about what I saw this week. We've got DeAndre Hopkins coming to town on Sunday for a visit. We'll touch on that. Obviously, the Kevin Byard situation is huge. He just spoke to the media for the first time. I'm not sure he answered anything that fans want answered. And maybe the conversation.
I think let's wait until the. Let me write that down so I don't forget.
Save it. Yes, exactly. QC Hawk. Levis hit the net today multiple times. Malik Willis could not get it into the hole in the net apparently. So that means obviously he's going to be cut. No, the videos you get are what they are. We're all trying to get clicks and views and traffic or whatever. But you can actually learn stuff by watching practice if you watch it, I think, the right way and try to take away the right things from practice. So we'll try to share some of that stuff.
I wish I would have known you were going to talk about this because I would have put watching practice. Braden splaining watching practice.
Just because I have an opinion, you Zach explain people all the time. Then
I got called out for it. I was checking the reviews for Football and Other F Words. I don't know if you've seen my Twitter feed lately, but I posted someone's review, and it said, here's what it said: solid pod, 4 stars. This is from Jake Butthurt Locker. Mike's the man. But Zach is like a Big Lots version of a journalist with a ridiculously inflated ego. And I quote tweeted it and said, "Can't help that I am always right."
It doesn't. I don't understand why when you get frustrated and explain things to people that it's just you doing good quality, thoughtful work. And when I do that, it's Braden splaining. I don't like that.
You're not in charge of the graphics.
That's fair point. That's a fair point. We are going to hear from 3 Titans players today on the show. Nick Westbrook-Akine and Chris Jackson. I had a chance to ask.
Can we call the Azeez Al-Shaair clip an exclusive? I mean,
I
would.
It's absolutely exclusive. Most of this time that we post stuff on this show, no one else is being like, I'm the one doing the interviewing. It's a one-on-one.
The NWI one had someone's head in it. I don't know who that little fellow was.
Yeah, that was Steve Lehman from News Channel 5. Shout out. NWI, and the reason I wanted to include it is because it was talking about the new offense and the new verbiage. So because that's going to be a big conversation today on the show is the new offense. Fun? ? So we're gonna hear from NWI and Chris Jackson from both perspectives on offense and defense about what that offense looks like. Then you got about a 2-minute conversation I had with Azeez Al-Shaair, who is really one of the smartest dudes on the team already, one of the more interesting, thoughtful guys on the team. Very good quote.
He should be a 4-time All-Pro just based on interviews alone. Like, if you should be able to get in for giving the best consistent interviews every time. I talked about that on Football and Other F Words this week. Is like, I know that the pass defense isn't going to be elite, like Kevin Byard said today, but it's going to be pretty good. And I think that it's all because of Azeez Al-Shaair in the middle is just energized. This defense just seems totally energized.
Yes.
By him.
And Chris Harris and Arden Key and Sean Murphy Bunting, all of them very vocal on the practice field. You know who else has been? Here's a nugget. Here's an early nugget for you from an OTA from minicamp. You know who else has been extremely vocal on the practice field, more so than I've ever seen before? Jeffrey Simmons. Ooh. Jeffrey Simmons has been yapping a lot, not in a bad way.
And yapping in DeAndre Hopkins DMs too.
Yes, not in a bad way, but like getting us fired up, getting people focused, getting people doing the right things and stuff. Very different. We'll explain a little bit later on, but I think one of the biggest takeaways is that this is just a totally different energy level and vibe at practice than I've seen since 2016, and that's as long as I've been covering the team. So we'll announce our winner, of course, for the Bourbon Trail trip. You want to do that now, or do you want to wait? You want to wait? Let's wait.
You want to wait? Okay.
Let's wait because I want to talk Kevin Byard here. Of course, the show brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Sign up for the in-crowd. You can do it online. You can do it in the store. You can also do it at Bluegrass up in Hendersonville. Great selection of beer, walk-in cooler, great selection of bourbons. They'll help you out. If you need to pick out a nice wine for something, they'll take care of you. Really good price point as well. Just really hands-on neighborhood location in both stores. And again, there's a reason they were the best liquor store in Nashville by the Nashville scene in 2022. They are the defending champs. And of course, Kingston Group, buildkg.com. Don't do anything to your house. Don't make any decisions about your house unless you talk to them first. Just remember the name. We're not asking you to go out and call them right now. But if you have a big decision coming on your house, buying, selling, renovating, whatever.
Hey, listen, I'll ask them. Go ahead and call right now. Get something done on your house and go ahead and call them.
When it's appropriate for you to spend a bunch of money on your house, you want to do it right. So remember the name, the Kingston Group. There you go. They're award-winning all these people are award-winning. F-Words Pod is award-winning. Sinkers is award-winning. Kingston Group's award-winning.
I think stackintheinbox.com this year is going to get an award. I'm feeling it.
I'm the only slapdick without an award. It's fine. It's okay. All right.
Maybe we'll get one for a football show, and maybe my clout from my previous award will be able to get us that win.
Best commenters in the city. How about that?
Yes, there you go.
Stony Keeley out front. All right. So let's get to Kevin Byard. He just spoke to the press for the first time. I did have a chance. So he's on the practice field on Tuesday. We're all standing there watching him. He was very vocal, couple pass breakups, big part of the defense. So he looks great. He looks like he's been practicing. He doesn't look slow. Nothing there to be worried about from an on-field perspective, but they don't let him available to the media. Then they don't let him available to the media again. So reporters are getting a little, we're getting all butthurt about this. And it's rightly so. They could have just put this all to rest by making him available on Tuesday.
They like to do everything a lot more difficult than they have to.
And frankly, I don't think Kevin Byard generally, and I've talked to him a dozen times, he is generally very open about the things that are happening to him.
Well, PK even brought that up, right? I mean, PK specifically in his question says you're normally pretty open with us, and some other words were thrown in there for describing the same thing. But he basically said you're always pretty open and forthcoming with everybody, and then followed it up with a different question. But that was kind of an alluding to you're really holding back today.
Yes, and essentially was asked, 9 different ways about taking the pay cut. And
good for the media, by the way. I thought they would for sure after a Jim Wyatt softball question got thrown in there. Over, but they kept coming back to it. And I thought stuff about that John Glennon asked about, how do you feel about that? How does I love the questions. I thought all the questions were good.
And Byard was like, I don't want to get into my feelings, which to me, if he was totally here's the ultimately, and again, if you want to watch the video, go watch the video and listen to the entire press conference. Basically, anytime it got down to the point where he needed to say something important and definitive for us to learn exactly what's going on, future or past, he deflected the entire thing to, I have people that do that. This is up to my agent and Rand. I hire people for this. I don't think. To me, nothing changed in the conversation. There is still no conclusion to be reached. Even if Kevin Byard is not worried about it, even if Kevin Byard is not missing a single thing, he certainly said, I'm not going to get into all that when he talks about voluntarily showing up for the next round of practice, which it sounds like he's not going to be at. It feels like to me that, as I've said to you on this show, there is going to be a contract extension for Kevin Byard. And until that happens, this is the shit we are in until that happens. That is my opinion.
So everybody has pretty much said that if he speaks, that means it's all good. And now he speaks, and I'm still not convinced everything is the way it's supposed to be. Or I described it yesterday as I think they're on solid ground. I think Kevin Byard obviously understands that he has the Titans technically over the barrel right now, but he's not. His team is angling for an extension. It is so freaking obvious. And then on the flip side, the Titans are not wanting to give said extension. But Kevin Byard also knows that he's getting paid a lot of money
No
no
matter
what. So he should be showing up, right? There is no point for Kevin Byard specifically to be holding in or holding out or whatever. But what there's a lot of things that I think is interesting to this, and the thing that you said earlier about you said something about him saying stuff and fans and maybe not getting what they want out of what he said. I totally disagree.
Oh, okay.
Fans totally got what they wanted because fans love to stick their head in the sand. This Titans Twitter fan base loves to stick their head in the sand. And so they're going to take him at his word because let me say this. Kevin Byard has earned blind, optimistic views from the fans. I do not disparage fans for believing everything that Kevin Byard says. He's earned that. It's not like Tannehill throwing 3 interceptions, right?
No, Byard
hiding and all that. He's earned it. It's the wrong take, but he's earned it because I think it's interesting that he pushed everything over to the people that he pays to do this. And I think it's interesting that the wording has been Kevin Byard has not asked for a pay or to be released or cut when he was asked to take a pay cut. That is true. And I've been talking about this for a while, that he didn't ask.
No.
The agent definitely threw something out there at the negotiation table in response. And that's what an agent is supposed to do. They're supposed to leverage and talk about that. Does not mean that if they said, okay, well, you better make sure with Kevin, you're going to take a pay cut. And then he went to him or take a cut. We're going to cut him. And then he's like, well, we're obviously not going to, we don't want to get cut. It's just, to me, nothing got resolved by him speaking because he chose him and the Titans, or he chose to not answer any any questions with real answers.
The details didn't matter. I mean, the fact that he said he decided in February to work out on his own, and he had constant communication with the coaching staff. We kind of already knew all of that stuff. Ed, this is what I was going to bring up. Ed asks, do you think he has a pending deal in place depending on the Hopkins move? If anything, a new deal helps you sign DeAndre Hopkins. So it's almost like you need to know the Byard move first, which is why I think they are we've got a lot of moving parts here that aren't related to Byard. And the Hopkins thing is kind of part of this conversation. Now, let me make one observation about I think that Ran Carthon probably could have handled this better. Publicly. I think he's a first-time GM dealing with, and I thought Kevin Byard, I think this is almost truly one of the more important takeaways from today, was how glowing Kevin Byard spoke of Ran Carthon. Mm-hmm. Now, I had a conversation with Ran walking out the practice field yesterday, and I will keep those conversations that we had to ourselves. But there is a personality that Ran Carthon brings to the table that I think is very apparent from the second you talk to him. And it is all the stuff that Kevin Byard said. He's a character guy. He cares about the players. He's a players first kind of GM. It's all this stuff, very cerebral, very thoughtful, very collaborative, all the things that got him hired according to Amy and Mike, and et cetera, et cetera. I had a quick conversation with him, and all that comes out in spades. It just pours out of him, how the kind of person that he is and how thoughtful he is. I think he could have. I think if you asked him today, would you have done that a little bit differently? I think he probably. Now, it wasn't his fault the news got leaked. That could have been from Byard's camp. Probably was. But could that have conversation been handled differently? Could it have been handled in a slightly more efficient or private manner? I think he would probably admit to you, hey, all right, hey, first time on the job, you're going to make a few tiny mistakes. It was a tiny mistake, no big deal. Let's move on. But I think he is extremely well respected by the players.
Well, I think also subsequent conversations with the media involving this, he could have handled better too. I think I think it was at the owners meeting, I guess, when Teron and PK interviewed him in a hotel lobby. I thought that he could have handled those questions better as well. I mean,
yes,
I think the premise of not negotiating in media is something you can aspire to happen. But at the end of the day, all media in the NFL, all negotiations in the NFL play out in the media form of fashion. You can't
eventually, yeah.
But a good takeaway that I liked about what Kevin Byard said is that he goes, it's not really for me when it comes down to deleting social media or jumping on a podcast.
Did you hear him catch himself? Because I could hear him say the thing that Jeffrey Simmons did, and then he was like, no. That's okay if you want to do it. But
yeah,
like,
if you want to,
I don't want to.
I personally don't want to do it. And
Right,
I think that shows a lot of maturity on his end. But, Kevin Byard said that his conversations he had with Rand Carthon were not about negotiations. They were personal conversations. So, yet again, Kevin Byard is not involved in these negotiations. He pays someone to do it. Now, he's involved as okay, this is what we got. Do you want to take it or not? Here's our options.
Yeah,
Do you want to take it or not? But as far as the actual sitting at a table or sitting on phone calls or going through the negotiation process, Kevin Byard's not involved. And that's not a Kevin Byard exclusive thing.
No.
That is what an agent is supposed to do. So an agent is going to play hardball at a certain amount of times.
But the end result and the end deal, in my opinion, that will be a contract extension. And QC says, is Byard the most likely to get an extension to free up space, or would it be Henry? We did like an entire episode on this. It's very unlikely that Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill get an extension. Henry maybe more than Tannehill, but the most likely to get an extension because of his age and his value on the field is very much Kevin Byard. It absolutely is what my opinion is that he is going to get an extension, 3 or 4 years, so that it lowers the cap hit this year. That might help them go get DeAndre Hopkins in theory. I think here's the thing though, and it's the same with Hall of Fame voting, and maybe it's not fair, but it happens. Pekka Rinne, for example, is going to get a few more votes for the Hall of Fame because of how much respect he treated people with and how much respect they treated him with. Derrick Henry's the same kind of thing. Like Derrick Henry will probably get more Hall of Fame consideration because of the kind of person that he is. And that is just a human thing that happens to all of us. We cannot control that. And I think that when Kevin Byard gets an offer from his agent who's been playing hardball and sees the offer, I think having a high-quality relationship with Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon is going to help that process at some point. And that is kind of the thing I take away from this, is that Carthon may not work. He may not be the right GM long-term. He may not win a Super Bowl. In fact, it's likely he doesn't. But swinging away from John Robinson, from this good old boy, like my way or the highway kind of deal, to like this very...
Kevin Byard would have probably already got his extension, and it would have been like $100 million with John Robinson.
Maybe you're right, but we wouldn't be having this conversation then.
Yeah.
But I think Kevin Byard spoke very highly of Rand Carthon today for a reason, in my opinion. And I think it's because he wants this all to go away. I think Rand would tell you in a moment of clarity, I could have done it a little better, but I want this to go away. I think they are working right now behind the scenes to make it go away. That's what I think.
Yeah, I look at it this way, and we can kind of use this to transition into DeAndre Hopkins. Before we go, Ed Henry puts Vrabel uses media to tweak/motivate players all the time. Carthon trying to keep media out of deals is a little hypocritical. Good idea, but it's a little disingenuous. I think disingenuous is the wrong word. I think it's naive. I think it's
yes
for him to think that he can do that.
And I think that's why he would say, I probably could have handled it a little bit better. I think that's why he would say that. And what's interesting is this. I want to mention one player before we get to Hopkins, because I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, when am I allowed to be concerned about Christian Fulton? Because you talk about tweaking people in the media. Vrabel's been talking about Fulton for a while.
I told you to be concerned about Christian Fulton like 3 weeks ago.
No, but I mean, like, but this was before mandatory camp, where he's now, what is he, injured inside the building? Like, what are we doing here?
Like, I mean, that's the thing is like again, Vrabel not providing clarity. We talk about, this PR group and staff and players, they need to provide a little bit more clarity, because shouldn't he just say, yeah, Christian Fulton came in and, hey, he's not injured, we're just getting him up to speed. Or, hey, he's a little bit injured, so we're easing him in. He did a lot of great work in Miami, and we're easing him in. Like,
no, they're going to win more games because they kept his potential percentage up to date a secret. These coaches are paranoid schizophrenics. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I think that because now you got people. I listen to mainly 102.5. I don't think I heard it on Blaine and Mickey this week because I caught them a couple of times. But people are talking about that. Well, he could be holding out. If Christian Fulton is holding out, that is a worse holdout than when Le'Veon Bell held out. Because I thought Le'Veon Bell holding out was ridiculous. I don't think that's the case. There's no leverage for Christian Fulton but I would understand like that there is an aspect that maybe they're just getting him up to speed mentally.
But to your point though about why not just end the speculation, we are left to speculate.
Yeah.
Because we can see who's on the bikes and who's not practicing. We can see we know
Christian
who's not
Fulton was on the bikes, right? At one point, I believe someone told me.
I think he was, but I never saw him. So I don't want to say that. I think he was one time, but I did not see him at any point on the bike today or at any point I don't think on Tuesday. Maybe it was Wednesday he was out there.
I think that's what I'm alluding to. Is Wednesday.
He is in the facility, though. We know that for sure because he's on site because it's mandatory, et cetera, which means we are left to speculate about either up to speed or an injury. And if his whole entire offseason was about this guy's going into a major year for his contract, he's in a critical piece that's vying for the number one corner spot on a defense that needs to improve its pass defense. He's a very talented player who's at times been very good for this team and at times been injured. He's in a really big moment. And if he's already hurt again, that's a big story. If he's not, it's not a big story, but you could just come out and say it. That's.
And I don't know if it depends on how hurt he is. To me, I don't know if him being hurt's a big story because it's the same story we've seen for 3 years of his career.
But that's.
You know what I'm saying?
That's important, though, man. Right
I know he's an important player and everything, but I kind of agree with. You can only coach the players that are available, but I think that it is a lot better. I think it's a lot better for your players for you to be honest with the media as a coach to say, hey, he's fine. We're just catching him up mentally. He hasn't been around. So we're just getting him. They did say he's in the film room discussing, talking, and learning. So, I think that's 90% chance.
Okay.
Injured, right? That's a 90% chance he's injured and it's probably a hamstring. But Vrabel's going to get asked about it every time he's up at the podium until he fucking answers the question. So why not just answer the question?
I agree. Again, reminder, you're going to hear from NWI and Chris Jackson on the new offense. You're going to hear from Azeez Al-Shaair on Mike Vrabel and the differences between he and Kyle Shanahan, which I think is really interesting what he had to say. So, and then we'll sort of dissect offense versus defense reality this week from practice. I have a lot of observations from practice itself, how to watch the game, what you can actually learn from a mandatory minicamp. We'll do all of that stuff. But all this weird off the field stuff from a contract talk and the leaks about Henry and the leaks about Fulton and Byard and et cetera, it drives every Titans fans to drink. So just go to Sinkers to pick up your drinks. That's all I'm asking you to do. And by the way, you could search Uber Eats for Sinkers beverages and they will deliver the booze directly to your house.
They drive so you can drink.
There you have it. Kingston Group, of course, as well. Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Make sure you remember that name. So Sinkers Beverages, the Kingston Group. DeAndre Hopkins coming to town on Sunday. My buddy asked me, hey, do you think, out of curiosity, how close do you think they have to be? Have they had conversations in order for him to take a visit? And I would assume, Zach, that it wouldn't make much sense for DeAndre Hopkins or the Titans to spend a bunch of money and time and effort and then to get out publicly that he's coming to visit if they didn't think that there was some mutual interest and some general ballpark cost that they both already kind of understand. Where do you fall on what they know about each other coming into the meeting?
Well, Diana Rossini, I don't know if it's today or yesterday, said that this is a hot story because he wouldn't take the meeting if you don't go to Nashville and fly out to Nashville and take a meeting and do all this stuff if you didn't have a lot of interest. And we all know that DeAndre Hopkins wants to get paid. So you don't fly someone out to lowball them. You don't take them out to dinner. You don't fly him on a private jet if you're going to lowball him. He's made it pretty well known. It's pretty well known that he is looking for an OBJ-like deal. Does not mean that it has to be a 1 year. Does not mean it has to have 5 void years. He's looking to get paid around that amount of money. In an offseason, as Mike put it on Twitter at Mike Herndon NFL. He put it as, if you're paying Alan Lazard and Devontae Parker $10 million plus each, 15 to 18 is not so bad for DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I'm saying? So, whatever that he may get. We've also talked about, and this is why I believe that this is like okay, you guys have shown the most interest. You guys are close to the number. Let's link up. Is because of the whole trading for the number 3 overall pick, which I've talked about a few times now, that in that discussion, DeAndre Hopkins was supposedly involved, and you would do your due diligence, talk to his representation to decide where is he looking, what kind of number is he looking for, how can we make this work with you guys, us, and this draft pick, blah, blah, blah. The other thing is that, for the last 2 weeks since he got cut Memorial Day weekend, nothing. You've had more teams bow out than you've had show interest. The Cleveland Browns were, I think, bowed out yesterday or Monday.
Yep.
Yesterday or Tuesday. We know the Bills, they made a move to extend Ed Oliver. They gained $5 million in salary cap, and they flipped right around and used that on Leonard Floyd. So we know it's not the Bills right now. We know that KC hasn't restructured or touched anybody, and they don't need to. They do not need DeAndre Hopkins to win a Super Bowl. We just freaking saw it. Patrick Mahomes on one leg won the Super Bowl.
What gives you that idea, Zach?
So all these teams are falling to the wayside. And so to me, it's like, is he going to walk away with a deal this week? This weekend, I'd be very surprised. I don't know if I'd be very surprised. I think I'd be like 60% surprised and 40% unsurprised, because so far, this is the team that's shown the most interest, and it makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense for DeAndre Hopkins to be here.
So here's what I would. So Odell Beckham was $15 million, $3 million in incentives on top of that, a 1-year deal. I think you could do a heavily incentive-laden contract for Hopkins. I think Hopkins needs to know that he's probably coming in to be not a true number 1, that you're paying him to be a number 2. And what I'm hopeful of is that this entire process is played out. If you're a Titans fan, this is what you want. The entire process is played out, that it's been slow, and that there's not a lot of interest. So therefore the cost just slowly each day goes down like $500,000 or something. And he starts at 18, and now he's gotten down to like 13.5. And he's like, all right, now the Titans are in my ballpark. Let's go talk. Let's go visit. They also desperately need a wide receiver who could catch 60 passes for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns as a good quality number 2 option on any given play. Him, Chig, and Treylon Burks could all be the number 1 option. And we'll get to why that could be in just a minute. But I have actually come around. I was very skeptical more on the injury and the PED and the missing time front. I've always loved DeAndre Hopkins as a player. But I've come around a lot more on his value to this team. If you can make the money work, which they probably can, if they can figure that out, I'm kind of coming around on risking it for a shiny weapon, because I do think that they're not a piece or two from winning the Super Bowl, but they might be a piece or two from winning the division. And that's sort of where I've kind of come around on adding a player of that caliber. Jeffrey Simmons clearly agrees with me. So
yeah, well, I mean, if you look at, and this is what we talked about football and other F words yesterday. We really dove a lot deeper into the DeAndre Hopkins topic than we initially kind of planned, like 3 minutes before we go live doing our normal planning for an episode. But Mike brought it up, and I did too, talking about Corey Davis and AJ Brown. He threw in Jonnu Smith and how that compares to DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Chig, and then you got Adam Humphries and Kyle Phillips, and those were the best year and a half of Ryan Tannehill's entire career. And if you even sniff that trio, really a quad, throw in Derrick Henry with Tyjae Spears, and that changes everything. It changes your slotting position for your wide receivers. To be honest, I think they're going to win the division with or without DeAndre Hopkins. Now, DeAndre Hopkins seals the deal, right? For me in my head, with my outlook, I'm like at 80% they're going to win the division. That would make this almost like 99.9% that they're going to win the division.
And from just
but for me, it means something more about the postseason, because if you're getting the Tannehill and Derrick Henry with DeAndre Hopkins, who is better now than what Corey Davis was, and Treylon Burks turns into A.J. Brown 2.0, which I hate comparing him to A.J. Brown, but just really
very, very similar player.
Very similar player, sort of, but I just hate comparing him because, you know, A.J. Brown got traded.
I have many things to say about Treylon Burks.
Yeah.
Coming up soon.
But, like, to me, why can't they be Super Bowl contenders with DeAndre Hopkins if they had DeAndre Hopkins? Is it just because of Tannehill, or is it because of Tannehill plus you still got the injury fear lingering in the background of your head?
I think, and this is maybe I'm channeling my inner Mike Herndon here, and I've been listening to Football and Other Efforts too much, but I think they're a bottom third roster in the NFL. I think now they might be the top of the bottom third. Like maybe they're the 23rd best roster in the NFL.
But would you say where would their top 11 on offense and top 11 on defense rank with DeAndre Hopkins? Because then are they really bottom third? Because it's really a depth issue, right? Everybody has an issue with the depth, and then that plays to the injury.
Nobody wants to say this out loud, and I guess I'll be the first one. I still think the offensive line could be a problem.
Okay.
I just don't. I think there are some positions that are among the best in the NFL. Their middle linebacker is, I think, and we're going to hear from Azeez Al-Shaair. I think he's really good, but like they don't have a lot of answers outside of him at that position. I think they're
at least Monty Rice showed up yesterday. Apparently,
he was there today too. I think there's a depth issue. I think there's they're one injury away from a lot of different pieces having to move around.
Yeah,
it's why Elijah Molden's getting so much work at safety. You think they are, like, for example, you said 80% win the division without DeAndre Hopkins, 100% win the division with him. I'm more of, I like Jacksonville to win the division by 2 games without DeAndre Hopkins. If they have him, I think it's more of a 50-50 proposition, and it's sort of like a let's see what happens. Who's the most injured? Who's the not, like who gets the breaks that go their way? And then all of a sudden, I think there's enough competitive balance there to win the division. But I don't think DeAndre Hopkins makes them competitive enough to go on the road and beat Cincinnati in the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill and this depth. I just don't think the roster's there yet. That's just my personal view.
I can see it. I mean, I'm looking at it from a perspective of everybody stays healthy, because that's what you are judging in the off season. That's what you are judging every team by is, well, this is their healthy 22. Like you're starting 22. These are the healthy guys. Can this team with DeAndre Hopkins with a healthy 22 contend with Kansas City and Cincinnati, who they barely lost to last year, and one of those games had Malik Willis?
No, I know. It's such a weird question, because if you say in the game of football, like in a 1-game situation, Vrabel is good enough to beat anybody.
Right.
Well, that's
what the playoffs are, right?
And that's what the playoffs are.
Yeah.
But they're also not. It's also a 4-game, 4-week absolute like gladiators who's standing at the end type of, after an 18-week just balls to the wall warfare. Like it's a 1-game situation mixed with this longevity and grueling intensity that's just, it's such a different sport. And I don't know. Like I think better about having Hopkins in town today than I did when we did the show on Monday. I think there's a better chance. I think a Kevin Byard extension helps them with that opportunity for sure. And we can get to, I want to get to like some of the players in this conversation about practice.
I only have one last thing I want to say about DeAndre Hopkins. And that's about making room for money. I don't want the Harold Landry contract touched. Okay. Why? I just don't, because it wasn't initially, it was not a good contract. He got paid top 10 money for a player that is not a top 10 player to his position. I know. Now listen, and I wrote about this at Broadway Sports Media because I shared it with the guy who says, what makes this a bad contract? Well, I wrote about it, right when it came out, that it's an overpay, but sometimes you have to overpay for players, right? But it is an overpay. But the reason why the Titans got into a cap mess, and I know that it's a different situation 2024 and 2025 because they have more cap room, but they got tied to players or carried dead money because they restructured contracts that were borderline good and made them worse. And that's look at Tannehill, look at Henry, and look at Byard. I mean,
Right.
the three guys that we all talked about. Extend Kevin Byard, sign DeAndre Hopkins, and you would have had, I think you turned a B+ offseason into an A offseason. Like, that changes everything about this team. Kevin Byard gets to stick around. The fans are ecstatic. I mean, they're like doubly ecstatic, right? Kevin Byard gets to stay. DeAndre Hopkins is here.
Yep.
You addressed your wide receiver issue. You did everything you need to. To me, that is my personal choice for the Titans to make room, if they deem that it's necessary, for DeAndre Hopkins, would be to extend Kevin Byard.
Yep, I agree. And some of why here's two major positives for Titans fans who are with you on, like, hey, why can't we win the division? We're good enough. The players. So the new offense is a big one, and we're going to hear from NWI and Chris Jackson on the new offense, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. You're also going to hear, there's also one great quote from Azeez Al-Shaair. You're going to hear my conversation with him a little bit later on in the show that automatically gives this team a chance to win any game it's ever in. is essentially what he's going to tell us about. So let's get into the practice this week. I was out there all 3 days. Let's hear from the players first. So this was Nick Westbrook-Akina. He was asked about the new offense and learning it and getting acclimated. And then I had a chance to ask Chris Jackson, because he's one of the elder statesmen in the secondary who's been around long enough to like watch all the different iterations of the offense. I said, what have you seen from the offense that is different? Because there have been more than a few occasions where they have come to the sideline completely confused. And so that's a good thing for Titans fans, in my opinion. So here was NWI and Chris Jackson after practice on Wednesday.
I'd say it's been pretty good. Personally, just getting used to the different verbiage. It's like learning a new language, kind of. So there's, you gotta unlearn some things, and just put the work in the playbook. And I feel like, most of the guys are doing the work to try to get it done.
This kind of the revamped offense that we've been seeing on defense. It's been very exciting, to see some of the big plays, they've been hitting in practice or, missing, and we going in the locker room and talking about the new scheme that they running. And, it's been really exciting, to be honest, for the receivers and for the DBs as well, because we know, this is, what breeds great competition. And, the offensive side, they're going to get better as long as we get better, back and forth. So it's been really good.
So part of the reason I wanted to ask that question of Chris is that Chris Jackson specifically, with Amani Hooker, came off the field on Wednesday on the big touchdown pass to Chikakonkwo that everyone's been talking about. They hit Chikakonkwo on basically a backside post. He was about 2 yards behind somebody, a bit of a blown coverage, also great athleticism, perfect throw from Tannehill, long touchdown pass, about 45 yards. They came to the sidelines. I was standing right there, and Chris Jackson and Amani Hooker look at each other and like, what happened? That was the quote. Like, what happened there, yo? Like, what happened? They didn't know. And to me, there was another one today in team drills where a running back leaked out backside and was completely wide open. Tannehill finds him. He scores a touchdown. Offense goes crazy. Defense is like, all the defensive coaches were pissed on the sideline. Like, what happened? Like, where did we miss that? And to me, that is a sign of some creativity. That is a sign that the scheme is what got Chig open on that play, that the scheme is what got the running back wide open on that play. And it happened more than a few times. You heard Chris Jackson, them taking the deep shots, guys being open. There's a lot more to discuss here, Zach, but Chris Jackson and Amani Hooker came to the sideline visibly confused by the scheme that the Titans offense was running. And I am not sure I've ever been able to say that since at least our Smith's days, if not further back than that.
I mean, that's a good sign, right? Because this whole offseason has been about the players. It feels like, when the discourse surrounding the offense not being any good has been solely because they're looking at the depth chart, they're looking at the roster and thinking, what good is this team, right? What good is this team? They waited to draft a wide receiver in the 7th. They signed Chris Moore in NWI. I mean, like, what good is this offense? And I have been trying to get people out from under that by talking about pass catchers, not wide receivers, and talking about addition by subtraction of Todd Downing, and the hiring of Tim Kelly. And I listen, I'll be the first one to say it. the hiring of Tim Kelly was such a letdown compared to the names that were available and the names that were mentioned that the Titans showed possible interest in. It was a very meh hiring. Like, you're not getting excited in your britches like Stoney is right now when we're talking about the offense. So to me, this is all very good. In fact, there is even more good news I want to throw in on top of this Titans offense's fun and talking about the scheme and Tim Kelly is that out of 32 offensive coordinators and play callers, Tim Kelly is ranked 19th in this weird, wacky formula that takes into account all of this important stuff that a play caller is responsible for. He's 19th. He's higher than Sean McVay. But his time as a Texans play caller, he was better than Sean McVay has been his tenure as a play caller at the Rams. That's a little crazy to think about, right? And I'm not saying this is going to be like the greatest show on turf 3.0, but we need to give Tim Kelly a little bit of credit that he is a far superior play caller, designer, scheme artist than Todd Downing was.
So even the individual drills are new. So, like, they are doing drills that they have never done before with the wide receiver.
Except for the helmet on the stick. That's always there.
Yeah, it's true. Except for the wide receiver. Like, even the wide receiver room is running 2 or 3 different drills that I've never seen them run before in their individual time. And it's because they are putting different routes into the tree that they have never had in the scheme before. And what I know, like in OTAs, there was a lot of talk about tempo and speed and in and out of the huddle and pace. What I noticed this week that is different is how complex and unique some of the formations, some of the motions, some of the sets, a lot of 2-back sets at one point. I'm probably not supposed to say this, but at one point, like Derrick Henry's in the pistol with like Tajay Spears.
They showed an image of it.
Okay, Derrick Henry's in the pistol. Tajay Spears is in the offset. And they've got a zone read play. They've got a play action play off that. They've got a play action to the backside off of that. They've got jet sweeps with the running backs that are coming and going. Like, there's a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of unique formations, a lot of stuff with tight ends out wide and Derrick Henry out. Like, again, I'm not trying to give anything away here and get in trouble from the Titans, but like, it's very different. It looks like a normal 2023 modern NFL offense, and it has been entertaining, frankly, to watch it. But I think to your exact point, as we've said this on the show, you have to get out of your mind this old school way of like wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. You got to get that out of your mind. And I know people are excited about, Carlton Dowell, and people are excited about Josh Wiley, and I get all that. Tajay Spears is the player that is going to get the ball the most out of all the rookies. Chigakonkwo could be your number 1. And here's what I'll say about Treylon Burks. He looked lighter in OTAs than last year. He looked even lighter this week than even just 2 weeks ago. He has made plays in almost every team drill that they've done when they do team fast, which is team 100%. He's made plays almost every single time. And I think he is ready for being a true number 1. What does that mean for the Titans offense? It probably doesn't mean 165 targets. But
no.
But they are creative, they're innovative, they're fun, they're different, they're fast. It doesn't mean all these players are going to be great or they're going to be a top 10 offense. But it is a breath of fresh air to watch the practices and feel like I am seeing something that actually translates to Sundays. That's all.
Well, I mean, you had Colton Dowell get schemed open for 2 touchdowns on Wednesday's practice. I mean,
a great throw by Will Levis on one of those, by the way.
Yeah, and Chig is going off. He's making a play almost every time you hear, and of course, you're talking about the 30-yard play 30 yards in the air for Chigakonkwo, right? I mean, because he caught it, I think, on the 2-yard line or something like that.
Maybe even in the end zone, yeah.
Maybe even in the end zone. But, to me, it's just like, this is kind of what we've been talking about, but this is also what they've been talking about, right? They've been talking about playing fast and with speed as the ball is snapped at the line of scrimmage. And they're playing violent right there, too. That is how Chig is getting open 2 yards behind everybody on the defense, because the scheme is easy It's easy to understand, easy to diagnose for the offensive skill players, for them to know, okay, here's my 2 route choices, or here's the route I'm supposed to run. I know exactly where I'm going, know exactly where I need to be, and I'll have that ball to me as soon as I get open. Like, that to me
Positionless football
is, yes, positionless football, fast, speed, violence, instinct. This is what they've been preaching about. And at the forefront of all of this, and I talked about this in Football and Other F Words yesterday on Wednesday, and I want to get your opinion because you've been to OTAs for a while now. Have you ever seen a rookie in the Mike Vrabel era get put on his plate so much this early as Tyjae Spears has? I cannot think of anybody that has been asked to do so much more than what he was asked to do in college. Maybe, I mean, Malik Willis, maybe you could say that, but like, to me, Tyjae Spears has been brought up. He's you can almost say borderline first stringer, it feels like, that has just got so much on his plate, and then they're going to put it all on his plate, and then they're going to slowly take it back. But that's not the Mike Vrabel way.
So what's funny is, like, if you say it like this, more than what they were used to in college, that's different than saying putting this much on their plate right out of college and into the offense. And it's funny, you guys, I don't know, you, Zach, you probably will take this the right way. I don't know if fans are going to take this the right way or not. But the guy who comes to mind, like right out of the gate when you ask that question, is actually Kyle Phillips.
Yeah.
Kyle Phillips last year in camp was put into basically a starting slot role right away.
Yeah.
And could handle it and could do it all. And like so today at practice, they threw a touchdown pass to Tyjae Spears on the ones in the red zone drill, on the last red zone drill of the minicamp. So again, think positionless, think versatile, think 2 backs, think 2 tight ends, think single wide, think 3 wide, think creative and different and unique. And that is why you could have 4 tight ends on the roster. So why you could have, it's why Spears and Henry are going to be on the field at the same time. Something we've all been asking for. It's why Chig could be playing as a receiver. Burks and Chig could essentially be swapping positions on a play-to-play basis, potentially. The one name to keep an eye on this, and Racey McMath dropped a touchdown pass.
I've heard Joe Rexrode talk about Racey McMath.
I know. I was actually arguing with Joe about this. He dropped a touchdown today. He's got to catch. He still doesn't do drills the way a third-year player should be running drills. They should be tighter, crisper, professional, and sometimes he just doesn't have it's just not tight. But man, he does things that no one else can do, which is this big frame who can run. And so I'm curious if he makes the team specifically for some of the gadgety trick stuff that he can do. I'm curious if that is the difference between him not making the roster or not, because they really do like Dowell. I think Dowell is a really nice player. He's limited. Everyone should lower expectations because he is a 7th round draft pick. But I think it really is like, if they don't sign Hopkins, I really do think it's like Dowell and McMath. It's Dowell and McMath.
Yeah, and they'll both make it because your top 4. You know, if DeAndre Hopkins comes, that's when one of these guys is going to get a little nervous. And I want to talk about something real quick, and I want to ask a question.
Well, can I?
Go ahead. No.
I want to do this just for Stoney and Ted and D Good and Zach and all these people that are like fully erect right now listening to this. I just want to say one phrase just to finish you boys off. For lack of a better term.
That was a horrible term.
Derrick Henry, lead blocker for Tyjae Spears. just think about that. Think about all the fun things you could do with that as an end result of a play call. Okay. What is your question?
Speaking of blocking, you know, Trevon Wesco is apparently gotten paid and just to sit around in the office all day. So how do Chig and Josh Wiley look blocking? I don't feel like that's a talked enough topic. I guess it's just because you assume that they may not be asked to block, but someone has to be. Is it just Kevin Rader out there on those plays?
Rader is playing in that role, and so I think it's pretty clear that Chig, Wesco, Wiley, and Rader are the top 4. But the name that I watch all the time in almost every drill is Azeez Mack.
Really?
The XFL kid from Notre Dame had a pretty decent season in the XFL. He is big, fluid, athletic, strong. He looks like he and Josh Whyle look like very similar players. Wiley's ahead of him on the depth chart and is running higher up on the depth chart. But he's been a really nice piece. Like there's been some receivers that haven't been very nice. But Mac has Mac's been pretty good. It's hard to tell.
Okay.
Yeah, like for example, today Caleb Murphy just blew up Jalen Duncan twice. Like just blew him up. It's really hard to tell who's a good blocker without pads on, or even they don't even have shells on. So they'll do a running play, and like you can see Wiley get good position, and he's in the right position for leverage, but you don't know how that play is going to end because like the DB can just like jump out of the way, and you can't really put your hands on a guy, right? Like
I was just wondering about
very hard
the tight ends and that situation and blocking. But I mean, Stoney's right. You know, if only there were two dudes in the Nashville media space that could have possibly seen this coming with Tyjae Spears. If only.
Well, thank you, Stoney, for giving me and Zach credit. I do appreciate that. Listen, that the way you have to watch this stuff, because again, and I know you wanted to talk about this, like the defense and the offense, like it was kind of about even most of the week.
Typically, this part of the year, it leans very heavily defense. And maybe that's just a Titans thing, but it's always felt like the defense always is winning, despite maybe not getting interceptions against Ryan Tannehill last year, but they were always winning.
And like today, there were like the last two team possessions. Like I would say the defense, quote unquote, won. But I think Vrabel said this, like, there's a lot of pass interference calls that don't get called when it looks like the defense won a play and they didn't, because a PI would be called. So I think that the who won the day is a very overrated way. This is where I'm apparently Braden's splaining. I think it's extremely overrated to try to boil down a practice to, the defense won and the offense lost. I think that's very stupid. I think the way to watch it is to like study trends, study formations, study position groups, study how they're using pieces and how much they're trusting them with, and like whether or not the play works or not is interesting, but it's not really what matters. What matters is they're using this guy this way. Oh, they're using this guy that way. Like, Elijah Molden's playing safety. Like Roger McCurry's always in the slot. Somebody earlier in the comments asked us about Fulton, who could be replacing him, and it's like the only options really are Sean Murphy-Bunting on one side, and the other one's been Chris Jackson on the other side. And those have been the two starting basically outside corners for most. Trey Avery was in there a lot today. Molden and McCreary are kind of rotating between safety and slot corner, but like, there's not a lot of competition for that number one corner spot other than Sean Murphy-Bunting. That's it. So,
yeah.
But that's the way you watch it, is you watch it and you see sort of general concepts and ideas. You can't be like, okay. Here's something. Jalen Duncan is extremely athletic and has a long way to go. They're doing conditioning on Wednesday, and Mike Vrabel's like pretty much hounding him for the conditioning. And he's like, dude, God gave you some gifts. You got to learn how to use them, man. And then he got like bowled over a couple times today but again, in shells, like not even shells. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. It's hard to watch practice and not just sort of like try to take away general things from what's going on. So we got a lot of stuff to do still on the show.
News? Before we get to Azeez, there's a little bit of Titans news.
We got to give away our second bourbon.
This will be just real quick. This won't take long. Analytics transaction. The Titans are hiring Sarah Bailey from the Los Angeles Rams, per sources. This is from Seth Walder on Twitter. Bailey was a manager of football analytics in Los Angeles and has been with the team since 2017. Very interesting hire. And as Wes on Broadway at Titan Stats on Twitter puts it, Titans continue to grow their analytics department under Rand Carthon.
There you go. I think modernizing the front office and the offense is all part of the game. Mm-hmm. And I will say to all the comments that are saying like, I'll believe it when I see it. I think that's totally fair. And I'll go back to one of my original comments. I still think the offensive line is very much unproven. Every one of those guys we feel okay about, but there's a lot of unproven pieces on that offensive line. We have no clue how they're going to hold up. No clue. So we think they're okay. they're better than last year, but that's not saying a whole lot. Not a high bar for last year. D good. Todd Downing went flaccid during the season. Yes, that is part of the problem. Okay, let's hear from you want to give away our let's give away our final what is this called? A Bourbon Trail Pass by Sinkers Beverages.
We call it that.
So Tim Dodge is going to be going with us on next Tuesday, up to Wild Turkey, Bardstown area. We're going to go pick out a Russell Reserve barrel pick for Sinkers Beverages liquor store. That's a really cool thing to like learn about and see behind the scenes. Also, we're going to drink a lot on the bus up and back, so it's going to be fun. We don't have to drive. And the second person who is going with us, you got to sign up for the in-crowd, which everyone should still go do because there's going to be more of these kinds of giveaways. So go sign up for the in-crowd. Please leave us a review, 5 stars according to Zach, on the podcast app. And this gentleman has been listening for a while. We pulled out his name. Quote, quality Titan and football content, good chemistry between hosts. Oh, that's us, Zach. The hot takes are well thought out and actually substantiated. In-depth breakdowns, the occasional conspiracy theory. I'm 100% here for it. Dusty Bennett, you are headed to Bardstown Road. So get to us, send us a DM, send us a message. We'll make sure that you can go on Tuesday, and then we're off and running. So, Dusty Bennett, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us. Go to Sinkers because you're going to have more prizes like this throughout the course of the summer and next season, and Kingston Group as well. So remember all those good folks. Okay. I had a chance to grab Azeez Al-Shaair coming off the practice field on Wednesday, and this is an exclusive. This is a 440 exclusive. And I asked him, like, sort of how different Mike Vrabel is from other coaches that he's had in his career. And I thought he gave a pretty interesting answer. Here's what he had to say.
So, as far as, like, his style of communication versus San Francisco where I was at, I don't think it's any different. I think the difference is that I wouldn't even say defensive-minded coach. I want to say yes, but, you know, he does the same thing with every position group. So I think he just is, like, more like a mastermind. I could just see like Einstein putting all these concoctions and writing all these stuff together just to make, you know, whatever it is that he's trying to build. And that's what, you know, that's his team. That's a winning culture. That's a winning team, winning organization. So, I mean, it's just, you can tell he cares because he's everywhere. And I don't even know how he does it, truthfully. I don't know how he can learn all those techniques from this group and then learn all of that from the other group. And you know, Kyle was really detailed in that same way, but I think he wasn't as hands-on with what we were doing, like on the field, where Kyle was more focused on like receivers, quarterbacks, offensive-minded coach. Whereas Vrabel, he'll be over there with the linebackers, and then you might see him across the field with the receivers or the, you know, tight ends. So I think it's just really, really versatile and like information overload. I have no clue how he's able to do all that, honestly.
Is it connecting personally, like with you
100%.
as like, I know how you learn and how you talk and how you communicate, that makes him good at it?
Yeah, without a doubt, because I think his biggest thing is getting to know who he's talking to. You know, because at the end of the day, we're all different. We all came from a whole bunch of different backgrounds. I think we could have been with 90 guys on the roster with training camp stars, whatever. So you got all these different guys coming from 90 different places. You know, and even if it's from the same place, experiences are different. So you try to learn each other. That's from, you know, the leadership, but it starts at the very top with him, and you know, he kind of sets that standard.
Thank you.
There you go. Mastermind and Einstein. And Tehran must be watching the show, obviously, because Tehran tweeted this out today. Quote, following Mike Vrabel around Titans practice always intrigues me. It's impressive how he can literally coach every position, even details for end men versus twists on a punt team. And I think that's an excellent observation by Tehran. I agree. Obviously, Azeez does as well. I don't think he is sort of the secret weapon in all of this. I don't think there are a lot of coaches that can teach technique and understand leadership psychology for every player in every position and every skill in the building. And even Kyle Shanahan doesn't do that. And he's really good. So first of all, Al-Shaair, great quote. Love that guy.
Also said he's not a defensive-minded head coach.
But he kind of like wanted to say it, but
he specifically said he's not a defensive-minded head coach. So that is the main takeaway right there, is that he's not a defensive-minded head coach because he's everywhere. And he wants the whole team to succeed in all facets of the game, and he's not just focusing on one area.
Yep.
We've known that he's very hands-on, and we've known that he's popping into meetings here and there to either sit in or give his input or whatever. We've always known this. But it's nice to hear the fresh-faced player already pick up on that and show that he prefers that. I mean, to me, it sounds like that he prefers or respects that Mike Vrabel is able to do all these things.
Yes, I agree, and he's absolutely the green dot guy. There's no question that he will be wearing the green dot when they are calling in the defensive plays. What I think is fascinating, if you watch, and this is kind of to Teron's point, like Vrabel will stand like in between two drills, and it'll be like the quarterbacks on one side and then like the running backs on the other side, and they're running two different drills with two different coaches, two separate groups, and he'll kind of be watching one. And today he did it today. He was like, "Hey, I want you," and he like coaches Julius Chestnut on getting vertical on the particular zone on an outside zone run. He's like, no, I want you to get more vertical, foot in the ground, go. And he's like doing something with the running back, and he turns around, literally grabs a pad and starts smacking Will Levis's hands as he's going through his footwork drills. And he's like, he's doing this. He's like running backs, quarterbacks. It's like he's constantly floating around all the time, and I think he's probably glad that the old whistle twirler isn't.
Has he never done that? I've always just assumed that he does do that.
What, Vrabel?
Yeah.
Vrabel's always been like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just make sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think because he's like this outside linebacker, big burly dude that sort of like looks like a meathead, that I think the national perception of him is that he's just this like football guy. I'm a meathead, blah, 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 blah. But like, I think he is we've said this on the show, like he's way more cerebral, way more into the human psychology of leadership in a locker room, communication, and then just having such a good football mind to be able to teach technique to every position group at all times it was on display today, and to hear a brand new player say that, after one minicamp, I think is impressive. So that's sort of the secret weapon the Titans always have here, is that they've got Vrabel. So
yeah. Yeah, I love it. I mean, you know me, I'm a huge Vrabel guy. I think the people that are just so down on this team and downplay what Vrabel has really gotten up my crawl. It's like, well, they'll never sign DeAndre Hopkins because Vrabel hates passing the football, or Vrabel hates this or Vrabel hates that. They'll never win a Super Bowl with Mike Vrabel as head coach. And I'm thinking, guys, I don't know why you hate Mike Vrabel. I don't know if he went out hunting and your dog happened to walk into the crosshairs.
Wow.
He's hunting or something and he killed your dog. But I don't understand how people can look at what Mike Vrabel has done with so much less and blame him for having so much less. Like, that seems to be the general consensus now, that their favorite GM, John Robinson, got fired, and rightfully so, that it's Mike Vrabel is still the scapegoat for John Robinson. Or John Robinson's the scapegoat for Mike Vrabel, that John Robinson wasn't really the problem. It's Mike Vrabel.
Yeah. As Stoney says, because there you go. Stoney got it right. And if you're watching, like, this is what happens is you get one of these rosters, right? Here's one of those rosters that you get it from the PR staff. You fold it in half numerically, then you fold it in half again, and then you start taking little notes on it. And I got notes down here that say field goal, first time field goal battle of the offseason. So it's mostly been exclusively the Wolf kid out of Texas Tech who's been playing. He's been kicking, and I think he's missed 2 field goals the entire practice this week and last. Today, on Thursday, was the first day that both of them were out there alternating kicks going head-to-head. It was the first time that it was a true competition, and at most they missed 1 field goal. I think Shudak went 7 of 7, and the Wolf kid went 6 of 7, I think. But I'll say this, and I want to know what you think. This is a very random observation. One of them is like 5'7", Caleb Shudak, and the other one is like 6'4".
Give me the 6'4" guy.
It takes him longer to get to the ball.
You think so?
It's how like a long windup, like Byron Leftwich, when he throws the ball, long windup. He's got a longer. Caleb Shudak gets to his foot, goes back and forward to the ball so fast. It's like a quick release passer.
Justin Tucker 6'1". I'm taking him.
I normally I would totally agree with you, but I watched him go back and forth, and I was like, that guy's the ball flies truer and it's released faster. Because I don't know if that matters, but we'll see. Yeah. Either way, they both connected from 52 today with like 10 yards to spare. Like a lot of leg on.
Another Mike Vrabel-ism or anti-Mike Vrabel-ism is that he has too much ego and hubris about the kicker position.
I've said that.
And all I've said is so far for this season is like I feel like that's been a John Robinson thing. Now you can say he has a lot of hubris to believe in Craig Arkerman, but I do feel like special teams is trending in a better direction. But I also feel like this is the time, and this is what Mike Vrabel has always said. This is the time to make mistakes, and this is the time to prove yourself, and that's how you should approach the kicker position up until training camp.
Well, you want to know who's – this may not be the note to leave on because I thought it was a really fun week of practice. It was very enjoyable. It was just very enjoyable. But you know who probably made mistakes every practice, and it's the time to do it?
Will Levis.
Will Levis and Malik Willis.
Yeah. Do you see the video of the video that the Titans released? Like it says, "Wait till the end" with the eye emojis, and it's Derrick Henry, catching the ball deep or whatever.
It was like a 6-second video. You don't have to tell me to wait to the end on a 6-second video.
But I mean, anyway, the point of the video was that Derrick Henry was like doing a Hail Mary and caught the ball, right? One of the worst passes you'll ever see. But everybody's like, oh, look at Malik Willis throwing ball to Derrick Henry. I'm like, that's not the takeaway. The takeaway is that Derrick Henry caught a really deep ball. But the other takeaway is that will likely never happen.
Yeah, dude, the Titans social team is great. They've
done some good stuff.
They crushed the schedule release party video down on Broadway. Like they've done a great job. That I saw that yesterday. I was like, I don't get it. I was like, what am I waiting for here to the end of what? Like I was like, I watched the drills. Like Derrick Henry's gonna be running fly patterns now in this offense. I don't think so. Malik Willis playing quarterback. I don't think so. All right. That just about does it. Sinkers Beverages. Congratulations to Dusty Bennett and Tim Dodge going with us on Tuesday. I'm sure we'll have some interesting video to play for you guys next week on the Thursday edition from that trip. Otherwise, Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. Remember those two names. Subscribe to Stack in the Inbox, of course. Only no empty calories, only nutritional content here on the 440 Sports Network. We do appreciate you guys for all of you hanging out in the comments today. We love you guys. For Zach, I am Braden. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week.